They dined on the consciousness of a dying species and called it enlightenment. The elite of Aurelia Prime feasted on miracles. In the crystal atrium's diamond-domed hall, where the air tasted of ozone and ambition, Senator Rallies, Torvin served his guests a delicacy that shimmered with stolen life, translucent cubes of luminari crown stew, carved from mines that once wove forests of light. The creatures' final songs still vibrated in the meat, their panic coded into every bioluminescent thread. The diners devoured it greedily, mistaking the visions it granted, towers of singing crystal, alien constellations, for transcendence, not realizing they swallowed elegies. But progress is a hungry god. Aboard the orbital slaughterhouses of Outpost Theta, workers drained luminari veins of their glowblood, bottling the essence that kept Aurelia's hybrid children alive, genetic abominations born of human avarice and spliced luminari code. In the shadows, a dissenting scientist clutched a secret that could fracture empires, proof that the luminari's songs were not primitive echoes, but pleas for mercy. Proof that the hybrids, with their star-haunted eyes and necrotic veins, were not evolution's next step, but its ransom note. Meanwhile, in the dark between galaxies, a derelict station pulsed with the remnants of a forgotten covenant. Its name was whispered in the nightmares of Aurelia's children, the Hollow Star. The feast was ending. The gods of greed had not yet learned that some hungers, once awakened, cannot be controlled, and that the luminari, in their desperation, had planted seeds in the cracks of human ambition. Some revolutions begin with a scream. This one began with a song. Chapter 1. The air in the crystal atrium tasted like greed and jasmine. Senator Rallies, Torvin inhaled deeply, savoring the metallic tang of the ozone generators that kept the hall's domed ceiling shimmering like a flawless diamond. Below him, the elite of Aurelia Prime swirled in silks and synthetic skins, their laughter sharp enough to carve bone. Torvin adjusted his collar, stitched with threads of liquid platinum mined from Zoria's corpse, and signaled for the first course to begin. "Ladies and gentlemen," he boomed, his voice amplified by subvocal implants, "tonight we celebrate progress." A hush fell as servants emerged from shadowed archways, bearing silver platters stacked with translucent cubes that pulsed faintly blue. The cubes trembled as though alive, their surfaces slick with a viscous, iridescent glaze. The crowd murmured, half in hunger, half in reverence. "Behold," Torvin said, lifting one of the cubes with gloved fingers. It dripped luminescent fluid onto the tablecloth, burning tiny holes where it landed. The finest luminari crown stew, distilled from the cerebral cortex of alpha-grade specimens, a delicacy reserved for visionaries. The guests erupted in applause. Torvin smiled. He knew the stew's true purpose, not sustenance, but sacrament. Every bite bound them tighter to the lie they'd all agreed to worship. At table 7, Dr. Soren Vey sat stiffly, his fingers drumming the stem of an untouched wineglass. The scent of the stew, sweet and sulphurous like burnt honey, made his stomach twist. Across the table, a socialite named Lyra Ven moaned as she swallowed her first bite. "Gods, it's divine," she gasped. Her pupils dilated into black pools, her cheeks flushing cobalt. "I can see forests, towers of light. They're singing, can you hear it?" Soren said nothing. He'd heard the luminari's song before, in the shrieks of specimens dissected in his lab. It wasn't a melody, it was a dirge. A servant placed a steaming cube in front of him. The stew shimmered, its surface reflecting the atrium's holographic constellations. Soren's hand hovered over his fork. "Do it, you're one of them now." He told himself this for years. As the architect of the Luminari prenatal supplements, he'd ensured Aurelia's children were born faster, smarter, hungrier. His son Kestrel was one of them, a hybrid, his DNA spliced with Luminari code. But tonight, the lie curdled in his throat. "Not hungry, Doctor." Soren glanced up. Director Mara Krell loomed over him, her cybernetic eye whirring as it scanned his uneaten meal. Her gown, woven from adaptive nanofibers, shifted from gold to blood red as she leaned closer. "The crown stew is a privilege," she said softly. "Refusing it could be misunderstood." Soren forced a smile. "Indigestion, Director, a hazard of age." Krell's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Age is a hazard we've conquered, Doctor, thanks to your work." Before he could reply, a commotion erupted near the hall's center. The servants had wheeled in a glass tank, its interior fogged with condensation. Inside, a juvenile Luminari pressed coral-like hands against the glass, its bioluminescent markings flaring in panicked bursts of indigo and gold. The crowd oohed as though watching a fireworks display. "A living specimen," Torvin announced. "Observe the light language of the Luminari, a primitive form of communication, yet poetic." Soren stood abruptly, his chair screeching against the floor. The Luminari's markings weren't random. They pulsed in repeating sequences, 3 short flares, too long, like a heartbeat. Distress signals. He'd seen the same pattern in the lab, in the final moments of dying specimens. "Fascinating, isn't it?" Krell murmured, appearing beside him. "Their bioluminescence intensifies under stress, like a dying star." The Luminari's song vibrated through the tank, a subharmonic hum that made Soren's molars ache. Around him, guests covered their ears, laughing nervously. "Turn it off," someone shouted. Torvin raised a hand. "Patience. The song is harmless, a vestigial trait. Our scientists assure us the Luminari feel no pain. They're little more than sentry plants, evolved to protect their ecosystems." The tank's speakers crackled as the Luminari's hum rose to a shriek. Soren's vision blurred. For a heartbeat, he saw through the creature's eyes. A forest of towering bioluminescent trees. Luminari children, if they could be called children, swaying in unison, their light patterns weaving stories into the air. Then fire, human ships blotting out the sky. Hands in hazmat suits, tearing, always tearing. The vision vanished as the Luminari collapsed, its light dimming to a faint flicker. "Ah," Torvin said, unfazed. "Specimen exhaustion, a common issue." The guests resumed eating. Soren stumbled into a shadowed alcove, clutching his throbbing temple. The hallucination memory had left a metallic taste in his mouth. "You look like you've seen a ghost," a voice said. A server stood before him, her face obscured by a half-mask of frosted glass. She held a tray of empty glasses, her fingers gloved in peeling synth leather. "I'm fine," Soren muttered. The server stepped closer. Up close, her eyes were bloodshot, her pupils pinpricks. Withdrawal. "You're Dr. Vey," she said, "the gene splicer." Soren stiffened. "I don't." "Your kid's one of them, isn't he? The hybrids." Before he could react, she pressed a data core into his palm. It was warm, its surface etched with Luminari light language. "They're lying to you," she hissed. "About the meat, about everything." "Who are you?" She glanced over her shoulder. 2 security drones hovered near the banquet tables, their scanners sweeping the crowd. "Jinn," she said, backing away. "And if you want to save your kid, you'll look at that core tonight." Soren locked himself in a restroom stall, the data core trembling in his hand. He pressed his thumb to its activation node. A hologram flared to life, the hollow star, a derelict space station orbiting Zoria. Its architecture was unmistakable, organic spirals fused with asteroid rock, glowing faintly blue. A distorted voice echoed from the core, "Sanctuary, sanctuary." Files scrolled across the hologram, black market footage of Luminari harvest colonies, their songs analyzed as language, corporate memos marked classified. Echelon Report 4471, Luminari sentience confirmed. Recommend immediate media blackout. Echelon Report 4489, prenatal subjects exhibit psychic resonance with Luminari source. Side effects irreversible. Soren's breath caught. Kestrel's seizures, his night terrors, the way he stared at the stars like they were calling him. Not side effects, communication. The hologram shifted. Security footage from Outpost Theta. A Luminari worker, its limbs mangled in machinery, flaring a desperate light pattern. 3 short, 2 long. The same distress signal. Soren vomited into the toilet. He found Kestrel awake when he returned home. The boy's bedroom bathed in the sickly glow of Aurelia Prime's smog-choked moon. "Dad!" Kestrel sat by the window, his sketchpad filled with jagged bioluminescent trees. His eyes, faintly blue at the edges, reflected the stars. "The song's louder tonight." Soren knelt beside him. "What song, Kes?" Kestrel pressed a hand to the glass. "The sad one. It wants me to fix it." Outside, a shuttle streaked across the sky, another shipment of Luminari meat heading for the black markets. Soren pulled his son close, the data core burning in his pocket. "What have we done?" Chapter 2. The transport shuttle shuddered as it descended through Zoria's atmosphere, its hull groaning under the weight of acid rain that hissed and sizzled against the reinforced glass. From his seat in the cramped passenger bay, Teek clutched the frayed straps of his duffel bag, his knuckles white. The recruiter had promised good credits, enough to pay off his sister's med debt, but the man hadn't mentioned the smell. Even through the shuttle's filtration system, the air reeked of burnt sugar and rot, like a corpse stuffed with candied flowers. First time on Theta. Teek turned. The woman beside him wore a patched hazmat suit, its visor cracked. She chewed a wad of synth gum, her eyes glazed with the vacant stare of someone who'd spent too many shifts in the glow. "Yeah," Teek said. She snorted. "Don't stare at the lights, and if you puke in your suit, they dock your pay." Before he could ask what she meant, the shuttle jolted, throwing him against the harness. The bay doors creaked open, and the smell hit him like a fist, thick, cloying, alive. Teek gagged, fumbling for his helmet. Around him, seasoned workers snapped their visors into place with practiced ease and shuffled into the dim, rust-streaked hangar of Outpost Theta. Foreman Vrick waited by the airlock, a hulking silhouette backlit by the flickering fluorescence of the processing plant. His hazmat suit was custom, reinforced with armored plating, and his visor gleamed with a heads-up display that cast a sickly green hue over his scarred face. A holstered shock baton hung at his hip, its handle worn smooth from use. "Listen up, maggots," Vrick's voice boomed through the hangar's tinny speakers. "You're here to drain the glowbugs, not coddle them. Stick to your stations, keep your visors sealed, and don't touch the merchandise. The light'll fry your synapses faster than a shot of glow blood." A nervous chuckle rippled through the crowd. Teek didn't laugh. Vrick's gaze landed on him. "You, new meat, you ever handled a Luminari?" "No, sir." "Then pray you don't." Vrick tossed him a battered plasma cutter. "Station 12, and if you screw up, you're cleaning the vats." Station 12 was a narrow catwalk overlooking the extraction chamber. Below, row upon row of Luminari hung suspended in nutrient-draining harnesses, their coral-like limbs limp, bioluminescent veins pulsing faintly through translucent skin. Teek's stomach lurched. They looked almost human, if humans could be made of glass and moonlight. "Eyes up, Rook." The worker beside him, a grizzled man with a faded echelon tattoo on his neck, jabbed a thumb at the conveyor belt. "You're on fluid collection. Cut the marked nodes, hook 'em to the pumps. Easy credits." Teek nodded, sweat pooling under his collar. The Luminari on the belt twitched as the machinery clamped their wrists. Their song began as a low hum, vibrating through the catwalk's metal grates, rising into a discordant chorus that made Teek's teeth ache. 3 short pulses of light, 2 long. He froze. The Luminari's markings flared in the same pattern he'd seen in the security footage from the data core. Distress signals. "Move it, Rook." The grizzled worker shoved him forward. Teek activated the plasma cutter. The blade hummed, casting a jagged blue light over the first Luminari, a slender being with tendrils like weeping willow branches. Its eyes, wide and pupil-less, fixed on him. The markings along its throat pulsed faster. 3 short, 2 long. "I'm sorry," Taek whispered, though he wasn't sure why. He pressed the blade to the node on the Luminari's chest. The creature shuddered, its song sharpening into a scream. Iridescent fluid, glow blood, spurted into the collection tube, and the hum faded to a whimper. Taek's hands shook. "Attaboy," the grizzled worker said. "Now do it faster." By the 3rd hour, the rhythm was mechanical. Slice, drain, repeat. Taek's visor fogged with sweat, the Luminari's song a relentless drone in his skull. He tried not to look at their faces. Then he saw the child's drawing. It was taped to a rusted control panel near the vats, a crude sketch of stick-figure Luminari holding hands beneath a smiling sun. Beneath it, in smudged charcoal, someone had scrawled, "Do not feed them." "The hell that mean?" Taek asked. The grizzled worker followed his gaze and paled. "Old warning. Before your time, a crew tried sneaking the glowbugs extra nutrients, thought they were being kind." He spat. "Luminari regenerated, broke free, killed 17 guys before Vrick gassed them." "Why'd they do it?" "Same reason idiots feed strays, got soft." The man tapped his temple. "Their light gets in your head, makes you see shit, you'll learn." A sudden commotion erupted below. A Luminari, larger than the others, its bioluminescence blazing violet, thrashed against its harness. The song crescendoed, shattering overhead bulbs in bursts of sparks. "Vrick!" someone shouted. The foreman stormed into the chamber, shock baton crackling. "Cut the node, now!" No one moved. The Luminari's tendrils lashed out, wrapping around a worker's arm. The man screamed as violet light surged up his suit, melting the visor. He collapsed, convulsing, as the Luminari's markings flared in a frenzied pattern. 3 short, 2 long, 3 short. Vrick lunged, plunging the baton into the Luminari's chest. The creature spasmed, its light dimming to embers. The chamber fell silent, save for the crackle of dying sparks. "Anyone else want to play hero?" Vrick barked. The workers returned to their stations. Taek forced himself to look away from the dead Luminari, its tendrils curled like dead ferns. At shift's end, Vrick cornered him in the locker room. "You did decent, Rook, for a soft skin." He tossed Taek a vial of glowing liquid Luminari adrenal extract. "Bonus, keeps the edge off." Taek stared at the vial. The extract shimmered, hypnotic. "I don't." "You will." Vrick rolled up his sleeve, revealing veins streaked with bioluminescent blue. "Once the song gets in you, there's no scrubbing it out. This takes the edge off." The foreman's hands trembled as he injected himself, his pupils dilating. For a moment his scarred face softened, his gaze distant. "Quiets the noise," he muttered. "Makes the lights pretty again." Back in the bunkhouse, Taek lay awake, the vial burning a hole in his palm. The Luminari's song still echoed in his skull, 3 short, 2 long. He thought of his sister, hooked to a dialysis machine on Aurelia Prime. Easy credits, the recruiter had said. He uncapped the vial. The extract tasted like lightning and honey. Chapter 3. Soren's apartment smelled of antiseptic and burnt circuitry. The walls, once sleek platinum alloy, were now papered with his son's drawings, twisted bioluminescent trees, faceless figures with glowing hands, starscapes that bled into jagged, screaming mouths. Kestrel had drawn them all in the throes of withdrawal, his fingers trembling too violently to hold the stylus steady. Now he lay curled on the floor beneath the observation window, his small body lit by the sickly amber glow of Aurelia Prime's smog-choked dawn. His veins pulsed faintly blue beneath his skin, like rivers of ink threatening to burst their banks. "Kes," Soren said softly, crouching beside him. "You need to eat." The boy didn't move. His eyes, too large, too bright, remained fixed on the skyline where Echelon Tower pierced the clouds, its apex shimmering with the opalescent sheen of Luminari-derived alloys. "They're still singing," he whispered. "Even the dead ones." Soren's throat tightened. He'd heard the phrase before in the early trials. Test subjects strapped to gurneys, clawing at their own faces as they babbled about songs and light. He'd called it neural feedback, a glitch in the splice. But you knew, he thought. You knew it was them. The medical console beside Kestrel's bed chimed. Soren glanced at the holograph, a serpentine graph of his son's vitals, the luminary markers in his blood spiking dangerously. The withdrawal protocol demanded another injection. "Sit up," Soren said, pulling a syringe from the cooler. The vial inside glowed faintly, a slurry of luminary stem cells harvested from juvenile specimens. Alpha grade, the label promised. Pure. Kestrel recoiled. "Don't, it hurts them." "This keeps you alive." "Alive like this?" The boy thrust out his arm, the skin mottled where bioluminescent veins had begun to necrotize. "I don't want it." Soren hesitated, the syringe trembling in his grip. He designed the prenatal supplements to be irreversible. A masterpiece of gene splicing, the board had called it. A generation free of frailty. Now it bound Kestrel to a drug they couldn't synthesize, a species they'd driven to extinction. "Please," Kestrel said. Soren plunged the needle into his son's arm. The boy screamed, a sound that wasn't entirely human. Blue light flooded his veins, searing through necrotic tissue, and for a moment his eyes went fully bioluminescent, pupils dissolving into twin supernovas. Then he collapsed, sweat-drenched and gasping, his small fists clenched in Soren's shirt. "Why?" he choked. Soren had no answer. He carried Kestrel to bed, the boy's weight alarmingly light, and smoothed the hair from his fevered brow. On the nightstand, a holoframe cycled through memories. Kestrel's first steps, his first day at the Gene Therapy Academy, his mother's face frozen in a smile from before the divorce, before the guilt had hollowed her out. The data core gin had given him pulsed in his pocket, warm as a heartbeat. Alone in his study, Soren activated the core. The hollow star's coordinates burned in the air, superimposed over files he'd spent years burying. Security footage from Outpost Theta, autopsy reports redacted to hide sentience, and a single, corrupted audio file dated 9 years earlier, the day he'd pitched the supplements to the Echelon board. He played it. "Imagine a child who will never know disease," his younger self said, the recording glitching with static. "A child who sees further, thinks faster. A child unbound by human limits." The board members' faces flickered in the holograph. Director Mara Krell, her cybernetic eye whirring as she leaned forward. "And the source material, these, Luminari. You're certain they're non-sapient?" Younger Soren hesitated, a beat too long. "Their cognitive patterns are rudimentary, plant-like even. We'd be utilizing a resource, not a people." Krell's smile had been a scalpel. "See that you're right, Doctor, for all our sakes." The recording ended. Soren stared at his hands, steady then, sure in their purpose. Now they shook. A thud echoed from Kestrel's room. The boy was sleepwalking again, his bare feet leaving faint bioluminescent prints on the floor. He moved to the observation window, his small hands pressed to the glass. Outside, a transport shuttle streaked across the sky, its hull emblazoned with the Echelon insignia. "They're coming back," Kestrel murmured. "Who?" "The ones who took." His fingers left smears of blue light on the pane. "They're angry. They want to be whole again." Soren knelt beside him. "Kes, listen to me. Those are just dreams. The Luminari, they're gone." Kestrel turned. His eyes were fully black now, the bioluminescence snuffed out. "You're lying," she showed me. "She." The boy raised a trembling finger. Behind them, the holoframe flickered, not with memories, but with new images. A derelict space station orbiting a dead world. A chamber pulsing with faint blue light. And there, in the shadows, a figure made of living crystal and smoke. The archivist. "She's waiting," Kestrel said. Then his knees buckled. The seizure lasted 17 seconds. Soren counted each one, cradling his son's thrashing body, until the medical drones descended with their stabilizers and shock pads. By the time Kestrel stilled, his arm was mottled with fresh necrosis, his breath sour with the metallic tang of luminary decay. The emergency alert came as Soren was scrubbing bioluminescent vomit from the floor. Director Krell requests your immediate presence. He almost deleted it. Then he saw the attachment, a security feed of Jin, battered and bloodied, strapped to an interrogation chair in Echelon Tower. Come quietly, the message read, or the smuggler dies screaming. Krell's office was a mausoleum of glass and steel, the walls lined with taxidermied luminary specimens posed in gestures of false serenity. The director stood at the apex window, her silhouette cut sharp against the smog. "You look tired, Doctor," she said without turning. "Trouble sleeping." Soren said nothing. His gaze drifted to the specimen behind her desk, a juvenile luminary, its coral-like hands frozen in a gesture that might have been supplication. 3 short pulses, too long. "Your son," Krell continued. "How is he?" "Alive." "Barely, from what I hear." She finally faced him, her cybernetic eye narrowing. Withdrawal accelerating, necrosis spreading. A shame the board couldn't approve his specialized care. Soren's pulse spiked. You denied his transfer to the Europa Clinic. "A clinic for humans." Krell tapped the specimen's glass cage. "Your son isn't human anymore, Doctor, thanks to you." The words hung in the air, sharp as a scalpel. "What do you want?" Soren said. Krell smiled. She activated a holograph, a live feed of the harvest colony. Workers drained luminary corpses, their faces slack with resignation. "The board is aware of your recent curiosity, the data core, the hollow star. It's a derelict station, meaningless." "Is it?" She enlarged the feed. A shadow moved in the hollow star's core, a flicker of bioluminescence. "Our scouts detected anomalous energy signatures, residual luminary code. You'll retrieve it." "And if I refuse?" Krell nodded to the interrogation feed. Jin's head lolled, her face a mask of blood. The smuggler's rather attached to her own skin. "As for your son," she tossed a vial onto the desk. Inside, a luminary fetus floated in preservation fluid, its light long extinguished. "Without our supply, he has 6 weeks, tops." Soren's hands curled into fists. "You're exterminating them, even now." "Extermination implies they were ever alive." Krell pocketed the vial. "You have 72 hours. Bring me the archivist or watch your legacy rot." Kestrel was awake when he returned, sketching furiously by the light of his own bioluminescent veins. The drawing was new, a human figure standing before a towering being of light, their hands clasped. Beneath it, in shaky letters, "They remember you." Soren packed in silence, a pulse pistol, the data core, a stolen access key. At the door, he hesitated. "You're leaving," Kestrel said. "I'll be back."
This story continues. Subscribe to our channel, like the video, and listen to the rest.